Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So it's the start of March, and this is a month where there's so much to be getting on with. There's loads of things to be doing. The season's starting proper, the garden's warming up, the soil's warming up, and it's time to get loads of work done in the garden and get this season off to an absolutely cracking start. Keep watching, I'll show you the list of jobs that I think you should be doing this month. So I've got my garlic planted right behind me. And one of the things that I like to do now is, as the soil's starting to warm up, as the weather's starting to change and the spring's starting to set in, I like to come out and keep an eye on the soil and what the soil's doing. And I come out and I have a look for things that are growing in the soil. And this is a really good indication of it, whether the soil's actually warming up and ready to plant. So some of the early weeds that come up, there's even dandelions starting to show their heads. So once the dandelions start coming up proper and the weeds start coming up proper and you start getting a little bit of those early spring flowers, that's a good sign that the soil's starting to warm up nicely. And when the soil's warming up like that, then things might be ready to directly sow into the garden. But always be wary when you're ready to sow directly about what you can actually sow. I mean, things like spinach, chard, certain beetroots as well, these are kind of hardy crops that won't do too bad growing outside in the garden at this time of year. If your soil naturally hasn't warmed up, then there's a way of actually forcing the soil to warm up a little bit faster. And the way to do that is to get some sort of covering onto the ground. So plastic is really good for this. So clear plastic sheeting like this is a really good way of getting that soil warmed up. Cloches are a really good thing as well to use. It's a great way of getting the soil warmed up, ready to plant into. If you're going to go and plant those hardy vegetables that I mentioned earlier, using those cloches to warm the soil up and then plant your seeds, or plant your seeds and cover them with cloches, that's a great little trick to get them going. So you might see some of the garden magazines recommend covering the soil with black plastic. Now I think that's a really bad idea. One of the biggest causes of microplastics in soil is plastic in the plastic used for horticulture. Now if we can reduce these disposable plastics, things like the weed membranes and stuff like that, or the black sheeting that some people put on the soil, then it's a really good way of reducing those microplastics and reducing our impact on the environment. Whereas these hard plastics, they last a lot longer and they off-gas a lot less. So these are a much better option, but they are expensive. I mean, if you can't afford that sort of thing, then stick to just letting the soil warm up naturally through the sun. Use your cloches. When you're mulching beds, one of the reasons that it's a really good idea to mulch in late winter, early spring, is because that nitrogen hit that you're putting down with using compost and things like that, you don't lose that as much to leaching through the winter. And that's why it's a recommended thing if you've got fruit bushes, especially in containers, or even in the ground, fruit trees, blueberry bushes like I've got here behind me, is just give them a hit of nitrogen early on in this month. And I'm just using a handful of chicken manure pellets. So I'm just going to leave that across the top and allow that to break down and go into the soil on their own. And any weeds that I see, I'm also going to take those out. I'm going to do the same thing to all my fruit trees in containers. So these are the fruit trees that I bought earlier on last year. And about this time last year I was potting them up. So here they are in all their glory. And I'm just going to take out any weeds that also pop up. Just give them a gentle weed and a bit of nitrogen feed in the form of chicken manure pellets. And they'll be good now to just leave them as they are, and they'll carry on growing through the season and they'll put on strong growth. I'll do the same thing to that fig tree there. And by the way, this is the last month. If you want to plant some bare-rooted fruit trees, this is the last month to actually get them in the ground. Before, the availability of bare-rooted fruit trees are going to be quite difficult to get hold of, and before the ground warms up too much and the trees actually break out of dormancy. So March is probably your last month to do that. So if you want to do that, get a move on. Otherwise, you can buy potted trees all year round and you can plant them out all year round, not a problem. So even in my greenhouse, I've got plants started. So I've got some herbs started already, some coriander. Now, I'll let you into a little secret. I had that tray full of coriander, just like it's sprouting back there. So I've got lots of coriander there. We've had a bit of an amazing addition to our garden. One of our chickens got a little bit broody and she's hatched out a couple of little chicks. So there's an advanced preview that you get in here. But that chicken did get up here when I left these coriander seedlings uncovered and she completely wrecked them. So what I'm going to do is, this side seems fine, I'm going to fill that side with compost, and I've got more seeds soaking on, and I'll just fill that with some more seeds. I've done a specific video on growing coriander. I'll promise you it's one of the best you'll ever see. Go and check it out, I'll leave a link for it up here. So other things as well is I've just potted this rosemary plant up, and I might even take some cuttings from this and try and get the cuttings to root. So it's a great time to get herbs started off and get your herb garden going. If you have a nice large container behind your back door, it's really easy to get access to. And herbs cost an absolute fortune when you buy dried herbs. So I've got my onion seedlings coming up as well, and this month is going to be a great time to get these onion seedlings planted out into the ground. This will be towards the end of the month, but if you wanted an early start, you could always start with onion sets. Onion sets are an absolutely fantastic choice to plant this month. Onions, shallots, your potatoes, these are great things to be starting this month. Really hardy, really easy to do. So I've mentioned some of the seeds that you can plant directly outside, but this month is also a great month to be planting more inside the greenhouse. So lettuces, get some French beans planted into the greenhouse for early harvest. Some dwarf French beans, that is. But I've got a full list of seeds you can be planting this month, and I'll leave a link for it up here. There's so much you can plant this month. So by this time of the year, the lawn's getting a little bit rough. Some of it's starting to grow back. Some of it's a little bit patchy in places. When you see that the lawn's getting a little bit more, when you see that the weather's getting a little bit warmer, and it's time to, and the grass is starting to grow a little bit more, then it's time to give that grass the first cut of the season. Now when you give it that first cut, give it a high cut, quite high cut. And what I like to do is, that's the point where I'll sometimes top dress the grass. So I'll poke holes into the grass with my fork. I'll put a little bit of compost over the top, and where it is a little bit patchy, I'll add a little bit more seed, because our grass gets a lot of hard wear. I know for some permaculturists, grass is not the done thing. I think a lawn is essential for a family home. So I'm getting my last harvest of carrots this month. So we've got some small carrots, let's give them up. These are Chanterelle carrots. So these grow a little bit shorter and a little bit stubbier. But once I harvest these carrots, what I'm going to do with that soil is I'm going to sift it off, rejuvenate it with a bit of fresh compost and a bit more sharp sand, and I'm going to sow more carrots into it. In a pot like that, carrots will germinate just fine. If it's going to be really frosty or really cold, then it's a good idea to give it a bit of fleece or cover it with a bit of hard plastic just to keep it protected. But they'll germinate, they will, and you'll get a little harvest like this regularly. And you'll keep on getting a little harvest like this through the season. And my daughter's just pointed out that carrots turned red. But yeah, we'll get munching into these. We might even make some gajarela. Small? Exactly. Okay, you pull all those carrots out. So I'm in the front flower garden, and this garden's taken quite a battering over winter. It's quite messy. We need to get this tidied up. Need to get this staked up. It's taken a bit of a beating by the wind, and it's got bent a little bit, but it's one of the first flowers of the season that we get, and I love these little pink flowers. They look absolutely gorgeous. And that's what I'm going to do as well, is people ask me if I do keep flowers, and I do. This flower garden is dedicated to flowers. So I'm going to take back some of these plants that have died back, and it's going to be the last time to give you a rosa pruning. If you don't do it in winter, now's a good time to do it. And I'm just going to look for strong shoots, and I'm going to get them pruned back, take out any dying branches all the way. There we go. We'll get some roses on that this year. I mean, that's one that was moved from another garden to here. It was planted over, but we've got roses all over the garden. There's a few plants that I need to take out, and there's a few things that I need to prune back and get it into a nice shape for this year. There's so much to be doing. There's always so much to be doing. March is such a busy month, really busy month. It's such a great time when you can see signs of life coming from the tulips about to flower. So, and the daffodils and the bluebells, they're all starting to make their appearance as well. And it's just such a great, it's absolutely beautiful time. So there is a bit of work to be doing in this front garden, and I want to get it tidied up, pick out all these bits of plastics that's flown into the garden through the storms and the winds, and fix up some of the things. There's some plants that I want to move like this. I mean, it's a plant that I want to move. It's a good hedging plant. Get it down to the bottom of the garden, and I planted it in the completely wrong place, but it needs moving. So if you do have things to move like that, get them moved. When we're breaking that dormancy and we're coming into that warm period of spring, then we're really coming to the end of time to be digging things out and moving them. Now, the last thing on my list is, if you haven't got any seeds started and you haven't got any young seedlings started, like chili plants and tomato plants, it's a great time to get tomato plants started now. But if you don't have the space to get them started early, you can always be on the lookout for plug plants now. I mean, chili plants, there's lots available from all over the place. I've got some for sale as well, so if you're interested in those, do drop me an email. I'll leave my email at the bottom of this video. So if you don't have the space indoors to grow them early on, now's a great time to look for the plants that you want and think about which ones you want to buy, and buy them and get them in ready for the season. So there's a list of jobs you can be getting on with this month. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe for regular updates. I also make videos on Patreon, so if you'd like to support our channel there, do go and check that out. I'll leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.